let's start. So today we are going to appraise or just read a journal paper. Whether you have read it or not, I think this is a sessions that we can look into the paper, and from the paper get to know the research. How was it done, and what happened in this research? And it was actually done almost like at the time of lockdown and COVID pandemics. Yeah, so the one thing that's really important for us to learn from this paper is why something that is proven to be effective for health in reducing weight, in reducing our risk of getting to pre-diabetes and diabetes, why it does not prove to be working among these high-risk study samples. Yeah, and I hope you do not doubt about the health benefits of diets and exercises. I think that is no doubt at all. I hope you agree with me. If you don't agree with me, I mean, it's fine, but we hope to be, just feel free to speak out and to justify your comments and ideas, because I think diets and exercise are nowadays, I don't know what else are there for doctors, for nurses, for healthcare providers to counsel our patients and our populations to stay healthy, other than having a good understanding about healthy diets and also exercises, physical activity lah, in that sense, isn't it? However, in this study, we found that it isn't found or proven to be effective when this study, the investigators compare the intervention groups to the control group. So something is wrong somewhere, and something is wrong somewhere, right? And we want to learn from this study. If you want to do one in the future for ourselves, for our country, or for our hospitals or clinic, you want to be careful of what to do and how to do this kind of proven interventions, proven treatment, proven programs. And I'm very glad JAMA actually published this kind of articles and this article to actually to make us be aware how to conduct a trial properly. And even if you do not find so-called expected outcomes, you can still publish it, and it's a sharing of lessons. And how they did it and how they report it, I would say, is very complete and comprehensive. So do not forget, when you read the paper, also to read their supplementary files and materials, and you can judge for ourselves how the study was conducted and what else can actually be reported to make us aware what actually gone wrong. Yeah, so I hope by the end of this MJH, we'll get to know what actually happening in this study, that the intervention groups, women of high risk women, did not reap the benefits of diet and exercises. Okay, so maybe before we start, I would want to say something about MJH. MJH is kind of online journal club, and we do not promise or we do not say that we know everything, but I would be able to say that we can identify what is the strength and the weakness of a research as reported in the paper. And we may actually be able to identify what would be the problematic area and an aspect of the research. And if we want to actually get to the bottom of the aspect and issues, then we may want to go and seek help from other experts or read further. Okay, so but we are trying to actually give all the answers to all these aspects and problematic areas of a research or report. One of the things, if I could quickly say, would be that this report, you can see that there are many typos. Yeah, many typos. Yeah, later maybe we can point out some of them to you. But even that, is okay. A little bit of silver lining is okay. Yeah, you have a bigger, better kind of overall quality in the reports. Yeah, people can accept a little bit here and there of imperfection. Okay, right. So Faisal, would you like to start sharing your screen? And go ahead. And for others, feel free to comment, but be keeping in mind your give us your reasons, and also keep in mind of the time that we have. We hope to actually uh, do something fun and complete within 90 minutes. Yeah. Okay. Right. So let's see. Are you okay?
So sorry sekejap ya.
It's okay.
Dah tekan tapi tak boleh. Tekan tekan.
Yes, can see your screen already.
I'm so sorry because I got a technical problem. Can I just leave it first? Then I will log in.
You want to speak louder, Faisal? It's a bit too soft.
There is a technical problem. I will leave the meeting first, and I will log in again.
Okay.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
Right. So perhaps we can discuss something. Do you all believe in diet and exercise to be the important healthy lifestyle? I would believe no one would say no, right? So I probably want to hint you in this paper and research when you this is kind of against our conventional understanding, right? So definitely there will be something wrong. And the one thing that you want to keep an eye to in this paper is that how they identify uh, the problem area in the delivery of the interventions. If you know about process evaluations, which is kind of a uncommon areas of expertise in Malaysia, and I would say probably in Asia, is an area of expertise that you want to assess in a trial how the interventions has been delivered. And if you look at this paper's supplementary file, they do actually provide the fidelity report of the interventions. Yeah. And again, if you know the context, the concept of process evaluations, you will know that there are more concepts and domains to assess than just what was reported in the paper. Yeah, so keep that in mind about process evaluations. When proven interventions did not show to be effective, and when you suspect something is wrong, you want that paper, or if you're doing the study, you want to look back and go back to check where has gone wrong. Yeah, so keep an eye to that. And in this study, it wasn't easy, as you can see, over like 1 year, and if you have read the paper, the interventions was actually quite complex. Yeah, group sessions and even individual sessions for those who do not achieve the target uh, target of weight, and they then move from group sessions to one-to-one face-to-face intervention. But because of the pandemic, they couldn't carry out the plan face-to-face. Then some actually, to quite a large proportion, have to be done remotely, and they did report all that. Yeah, so uh, even after all that modifications to the interventions, right? Remember that you have the control group that just go as usual. Why it just does not exert any effect at all? Yeah, compared to not doing anything, wouldn't we think that should we receive any coaching, any counseling, any indication, any further helps in terms of diet exercises? Wouldn't that cause some difference at all, isn't it? Yeah. So, but the paper actually showed does not actually have any effect at all if the interventions of diet, exercises, coaching, support, all that did not achieve certain level. I mean, in this study is among the South Asian women, yeah. So, are South Asian women different from many of us in Asia, or would something else was actually missed out in that interventions? Yeah. Okay, Faisal, are you there? Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
taking too much of time.
Can you hear me?
If you're ready,
Sorry, Bob. Can
please
you hear
indicate
me?
so and go ahead.
Can you hear me? Or you
Maybe
can't
you
hear
want to
me?
speak. Let me see my mic. Yeah, I think maybe it was my mic. You can try again.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Alright. Okay. Alright. Sorry for the sorry for the inconvenience. Okay. Thank you, Prof. Chu, for the kind introduction. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good morning to everyone. I'm Nur Faiza Saibul, Research Officer from Clinical Research Unit HPUPM. Welcome to Meta Journal Hour 8 this morning. Okay, as Prof. Chu did mention earlier, today we will discuss a very relevant trial in a high-risk population but the proven lifestyle intervention based on previous RCT did not perform as expected. What has gone wrong in this trial? So I hope we will be able to appraise this research article together. Okay, let's start. Sorry, I can't next my slide. Oh my god. Wait there. Sorry, I can't. Okay. Alright. Okay. This is the article of the day entitled Effects of a Lifestyle Intervention to Prevent Deterioration in Glycemic Status Among South Asian Women with Recent Gestational Diabetes, a randomized clinical trial. You can scan the QR code to access the full article. Okay, this is a critical appraisal checklist for randomized control trial. I'm using Critical Appraisal Skill Program CASP Randomized Control Trials Checklist. CASP Critical Appraisal Skills Program Checklist are a series of checklists involving prompt questions to help researchers evaluate research studies. For this CASP RCT checklist, there are 11 questions designed to help us to thinking about study design, study methodology and results systematically. As for introduction, gestational diabetes or GDM prevalence is increasing globally, particularly in South Asia. Women with GDM are at increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Whereas women with prediabetes have an increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes if they have a history of GDM compared with those without prior GDM. Randomized trials have found that lifestyle interventions can delay or prevent type 2 diabetes among individuals with prediabetes. Okay, the lifestyle intervention in gestational diabetes or living study or this study is a randomized implementation trial of a pragmatic lifestyle intervention program among South Asian women with a recent GDM affected pregnancy. The aim of the study was to investigate whether lifestyle intervention would prevent deterioration in glycemic status among women who had not already developed type 2 diabetes. Okay, for research questions, can an evidence-based lifestyle intervention adapted to local context prevent glycemic deterioration among women with recent gestational diabetes GDM in South Asia? Okay, as for general objective, this study aimed to investigate whether a resource-appropriate and context-appropriate lifestyle intervention could prevent glycemic deterioration among women with recent GDM in South Asia. The specific objectives are to determine the proportion of women with a change of glycemic category at or prior to final visit, normal glucose tolerance to prediabetes, which is impaired fasting glucose or impaired glucose tolerance, or normal glucose tolerance to type 2 diabetes, and second, prediabetes to type 2 diabetes. Second, to determine the progression to type 2 diabetes and mean changes in body weight, waist circumference, systolic blood pressure, fasting blood glucose, physical activity level, and calorie intake. And lastly, to determine the pre-specified outcomes, including mean changes in heart rate, diastolic blood pressure, hip circumference, daily moderate activity, daily sedentary activity, sleep duration, and intake of specific dietary components. Okay, now let's take a look at the methodology. This study is a participant unblinded parallel group individual randomized clinical trial. The study was conducted in 19 urban hospitals in India, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh from November 2017 to January 2020, and the follow-up ended in January 2021. For study population, women diagnosed with GDM within the previous 18 months with an oral glucose tolerance test or OGTT at from 24 to 34 weeks gestation based on the International Association of the Diabetes and Pregnancy Study Groups criteria were enrolled in this study. Given that routine GDM screening at some centers occurred earlier than 24 weeks gestation, additional criteria were accepted. For sampling method, hospitals were selected from study sites that have agreed to take part in the living trial using a purposive sampling method, and women with prior or current GDM were purposely sampled from hospital records. Okay, for randomization was conducted through a central computer-based randomization service and was stratified by country, center, and use of insulin during pregnancy. Participants were allocated by central computer using randomly permuted blocks of size 4 and 6. Randomization at a ratio of 1 to 1 to a 12-month lifestyle intervention or usual care. Central study staff were blinded to participant allocation, but this was not possible for site personnel or participants. Laboratories were unaware of participant allocation and reports were verified against database entries by a central blinded observer. Okay, now we look into inclusion and exclusion criteria. For inclusion criteria, women those who are absent of type 2 diabetes at 3 to 18 months postpartum OGTT were eligible to be included in the study. And the exclusions criteria, there were several exclusion criteria which were including confirmed case of type 2 diabetes, travel time to hospital more than 2 hours unless individual circumstances will not impede a hospital attendance for study visits, lack of access to a mobile telephone, use of steroids during pregnancy other than for lung maturation of the baby, likelihood of moving residence in the next 3 years. Okay, this is the ideal scenario to identify women with GDM are eligible for the living study based on OGTT. Women with GDM were eligible to participate in the study, and this identifying method was used to recruit about 88% participants for the study. Okay, figure 1 shows the study scheme. Okay, women with GDM identified at 24 to 34 weeks gestation were asked to have a OGTT at 3 to 18 months post-childbirth. Women with normal or pre-diabetes in which having impaired fasting glucose or impaired glucose tolerance were randomized into intervention and control group. For intervention group, participants were involved in a lifestyle intervention program delivered over 12 months and exposed to additional educational program to increase the knowledge on nutrition and physical activity. Participants in the control group will receive standard GDM care or usual care. All participants will follow up at the median of 24 months, 6-month follow-up with HbA1c annual and end of study visits with OGTT. Control group participants will be referred to their usual doctor for ongoing management with no attempt made to influence this. Any abnormal OGTT results during follow-up will be provided to the patient and their doctor. This is entirely consistent with current usual care. Women with type 2 diabetes mellitus were excluded from the study. Okay, this is a sample size calculation. A sample size of 1,414 women with GDM was estimated to provide 90% power to sided alpha 0.05 to detect a 35% relative decrease in worsening glycemic status, assuming a 20% cumulative incidence in the control group at 24 months and 20% missing outcome data. A key secondary outcome is body weight. Inclusion of 1,414 women will provide 19% power to detect a difference of 1.8 kg, assuming a mean body weight of 64.2 kg in the control group. Okay, I've tried to calculate the sample size using cleancow.com website. So that from the calculation, the sample size was 1,178, and after 20% missing outcome data or dropout was added, the total of sample size was 1,414, which is similar with the sample size of this study. Okay, now let's take a look at the interventions. A 12-month lifestyle intervention focused on diet and physical activity involving group and individual sessions as well as remote engagement adapted to local contexts and resources. This was compared with usual care. The lifestyle intervention was based on prior approaches associated with preventing weight gain in post-GDM population and modified through mixed method formative research in each country. The planned program included... program included four 90-minute face-to-face group sessions over 6 months, followed by 2 face-to-face individual sessions for individuals who were persistently overweight or had gained more than 2% of baseline body weight. At group sessions, facilitators aim to provide core messages and lead activities with a focus on diet and physical activity. Intervention group participants were planned to receive a detailed written program content, a total of 84 pre-recorded voice or text messages over a 42-week period, and monthly follow-up calls after completion of group sessions. Facilitators were provided with specific training for program delivery, and no attempt was made to influence the treatment of participants receiving usual care. Okay, now let's take a look at the figure 1, which is this figure shows planned intervention. Okay, as we can see here, 4 group sessions were conducted within 6 months or at 26 weeks. The group session consists of program introduction, risk associated with diabetes, diet and goal setting to increase self-efficacy, physical activity and weight management. 2 text or voice messages per week were sent to reminding of core messages, and individual coaching was conducted through monthly phone call. Group session 4 was conducted at week 26, which are focusing on reinforcement and evaluation of goal attainment. From March 2020, due to COVID-19 lockdown, all intervention sessions were held remotely by telephone or video, either individually or in group. As weight changes cannot be assessed during lockdown, all participants who completed session 4 were offered intensification. As we can see here, the participants were divided into non-intensification owing to attainment of weight goals or intensification owing to non-attainment of weight goals. For those in for intensification owing to non-attainment of weight goals, they will receive individual session. They will receive 2 individual sessions focusing on addressing specific barriers, and 2 text of voice messages per week for at week 32 and week 44. Okay, at week 33 to 43, 2 text of or voice messages per week plus monthly phone call will be were delivered. And for the non-intensification owing to attainment of weight goals, they only receive 2 text or voice messages per week to reminding of core messages and monthly phone call for individual coaching. At week 52, end of intervention feedback from participants were obtained. Okay, in total, there were 84 text or voice messages and 9 phone calls from facilitators planned for each participant.
Yeah, Faisal, just hold on for a while. I just want to drive home these interventions, Can you go back the slide, the table? Okay, you see at these interventions, to me, is very complex and very, whenever you think about interventions, basically we categorize into 2. One is simple and brief. The other one is long and complex. So this is very complex and long, and you can see the effort has to be invested in to implement this intervention. Okay, so there are group sessions in the first 6 months and the individual session in the second 6 months. Wow, yeah. So if this does not work, so something must be really wrong somewhere, isn't it? Yeah, if I were to be the high-risk woman in the intervention group, either I take it or I hate it, isn't it? If I take it, then how much I take it lah, and I change my lifestyle. If I hate it, then why did I hate it? Can it happen that the woman was so annoyed and feel like frustrated with all this coaching? I don't know. Yeah. So keep that in mind. This is something that is not easy to do. And the other thing is that whenever you think about interventions, beside the content, right? The other thing is that it's a person who delivered it. Okay, so basically these two aspects, like you go to a university, you look at these two things also lah. I mean beside yourself lah. Okay, so assuming all the women here in the study samples are those who agree to participate, right? Like you want to go to university to study lah. Let's say you want to go to university to study as a doctor. So you want to go to study. So assuming all of you who entered the first year medical school are the same. So what are the other two factors will influence your success, academic success or failure, would be the curriculum and the teacher lah. Yeah, assuming the facility is the same. Yeah. Okay. So here, think about that. If the content is so complete, like your medical school's curriculum is proven, adapted over the years, and it is a tip-top kind of a proven curriculum, then why at the end of 5 years you don't make it? Yeah. So then it goes back to whether the curriculum was followed as on the paper, yeah, or whether the person who's supposed to teach and deliver the curriculum, like here the interventions, whether they did it as to the level that is expected. So it's competency issue lah. Whether the nurses or the social counselor, the other one, it's like three different categories for deliverer in the three countries. Whether they deliver all this intervention as expected to the competent level that is sufficient lah. Yeah. Okay. So put the one content intervention put here. I no doubt about it. Is what else can be done, right? I mean, of course, you can do it slightly differently, but this is very, very, very personal. You can see the second 6 months is very personal. They come to you, hello, why you are not achieving, and then focusing on a specific barrier, why you cannot do, or the kind of thing. If this is done, then what is actually transpired in the personal coaching will be whether the person take it or not lah, or whether the person who deliver it like to do it lah. Yeah. So the quality of that coaching will be the one that you want to look at and think about lah. Yeah, it's good, can be good, nice on paper. Whether it's really good and nice when it's carried out, that's another issue, isn't it? Okay. Right. So thank you. Let's go on.
Okay, let's continue. From March 25, 2020, due to lockdown measures relating to the COVID-19 emergency, the following changes to participants' follow-up have been instituted. All follow-up visits with study participants will be conducted remotely via telephone. This will exclude the ability to collect any data relating to anthropometric measurements, OGTT, HbA1c, and vitals. All participants who have completed at least 12 months follow-up and if randomized to the intervention have completed all aspects of the intervention will have an off-study visit scheduled as their next visit. Once lockdown conditions have been lifted, all participants will be scheduled for a visit to, at a minimum, undergo testing for HbA1c and undergo an OGTT. If conditions allow, in-clinic visit will be arranged for anthropometric measures and vitals. Okay, now let's take a look at the study procedure. Data were collected at 6 monthly interval thereafter involving a case record form with OGTT and HbA1c test. Follow-up visits were conducted every 6 months after baseline assessment using local laboratories, and OGTT was performed at each annual visit and at the end of follow-up. Glycosylated hemoglobin HbA1c was measured at interim 6-month visit followed by an OGTT. If the HbA1c was 6.5% or greater and at the end of the follow-up, data on blood pressure, anthropometry, diet and physical activity were collected at each visit. Blood pressure was measured using an automated sphygmomanometer, Omron JPN1, with a mean of 2 readings after 5 minutes of rest recorded. Body weight was measured using digital scale, Omron HN286 with the individual wearing light clothing. Waist circumference was measured halfway between the lowest rib palpable in the mid-axillary line and the top of the iliac crest. Dietary information was obtained using 24 dietary recall system for Standard Scotland, Newcastle University and the University of Cambridge using local adaptations. Physical activity information was obtained using modified Global Physical Activity Questionnaire or GPAC. Planned termination of follow-up occurred with a verified non-study diagnosis of type 2 diabetes or if a participant became pregnant. Okay, this is the data collection guideline. At the pre-registration visit, obtain stage 1 written informed consent to contact patient during the postpartum period and perform OGTT. If OGTT is positive, discuss interest in participation and deliver brief standardized educational program. At registration visit at 3 to 18 month postpartum, perform OGTT and measure HbA1c. At randomization visit week 0, obtain stage 2 written informed consent, assess inclusion and exclusion criteria, record demographic data and medical history, measure height, weight, waist circumference and blood pressure, administer diet and physical activity questionnaire and record healthcare utilization since delivery. At 6-month visits, measure weight, waist circumference and blood pressure. Determine whether an interim diagnosis of type 2 diabetes has been made. If yes, obtain confirmatory source documentation. The participant will not be followed up further and will be discontinued from the study intervention. Data will be censored for these participants. At month 6, 18 and 30, perform HbA1c. If the value is more than 6.5%, patient will be called for OGTT. At month 12, 24 and 36, perform OGTT unless an interim diagnosis of type 2 diabetes has been made. And source documentation is available. Participants who change glycemic category but do not develop type 2 diabetes will be followed up. Administer diet and physical activity questionnaire, record healthcare utilization since the last study visit and record any serious adverse events since the last study visit. At end of
Just
study visit. Yeah,
okay.
Prof?
Right. Okay, maybe you finish off this slide first, I think.
At end of study visit, measure weight, waist circumference and blood pressure. Determine whether an interim diagnosis of type 2 diabetes has been made. If an interim diagnosis of type 2 diabetes has been made, obtain confirmatory source documentation. If not, perform OGTT and measure HbA1c. Administer diet and physical activity questionnaires and record healthcare utilization since the last study visit and record any serious events since the last study visit.
Do you have any info on who measured all this in the paper?
No, Prof.
We know that in the methods part, the paper said toes on the field and participant cannot be blinded, right?
Yeah, yeah. But
Does that mean also the person who deliver the interventions measure all these outcome, the weight lah, the waist circumference lah, BP, all this? How about the control groups?
Okay, honestly, I'm not sure, Prof, because this is the plan for the data collection. But because of the COVID-19 lockdown, I'm not sure the implementation of this data collection was carried out by trained facilitators or not. I'm not sure about it, Prof.
Okay, maybe you'll look into their protocol, isn't it? They do have a protocol. I'll try to look into that. So in this final report, they don't actually describe clearly who actually measured all this outcome, isn't it? Yeah. So I mean, in the conventional, uh, we take it for granted that all the scientists are credible, that they have no reason to fault all these measurements, isn't it? But we never really know unless the design put in place that those who measure, they don't actually know whether the women were in the intervention group or control groups. Because I think, especially like you measure weight and height and waist circumference, 1-2 centimeter difference would actually make a difference, I think. Yeah. Uh, right. Okay. Just keep that in mind as well. I think that's proceed. Yeah.
Okay, for main outcomes and measures, the primary outcome is deterioration in glycemia, consisting of the development of type 2 diabetes or progression from normal glucose tolerance to pre-diabetes or uh, pre-diabetes, for example, impaired fasting glucose or impaired glucose tolerance. For a pre-specified sensitivity analysis additional, follow-up measures of glycemia, HbA1c or fasting plasma glucose were used when OGTT results were unavailable. For secondary outcomes, new onset type 2 diabetes and change in body weight. Okay, this is the details of the outcome. For primary outcome, proportion of human with a change of glycemic category at or prior to final visit, normal glucose tolerance to impaired fasting glucose or impaired glucose tolerance or normal glucose tolerance to type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes to type 2 diabetes. For pre-specified secondary outcomes, progression to type 2 diabetes and mean changes in fasting plasma glucose, systolic blood pressure, body weight, waist circumference, physical activity level, calorie intake. And for others pre-specified outcomes, heart rate, diastolic blood pressure, hip circumference, daily moderate activity, daily sedentary activity, sleep duration, and intake of specific dietary components. Okay, for secondary outcomes, physical activity, review after database log revealed invisible values for overall physical activity levels, which could not be reliably reported. After post-hoc application of feasibility range, data among 1,406 study participants contributed to analysis on daily moderate activity. 12.2% excluded, and data among 1,495 participants contributed to analysis on daily sedentary activity and sleep duration, with 6.6% excluded. Okay, this is the evaluation of the intervention. A detailed process and outcome evaluation will be conducted to inform the successful implementation and scale up of the intervention. It will also aim to inform for whom effectiveness was greatest and under what conditions or circumstances. Key issues to explore include how healthcare workers deliver the intervention, what effects it has on organizational practice and personnel and vice versa, what are patients' experiences with the study, the factors that influence their motivation to take up and continue with recommended lifestyle changes, the strategies they use to do so, and the role of their family and peers. Data will be collected at the end of the intervention period through the use of semi-structured, in-depth interviews and focus group discussion.
So this is what they plan, is it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
has the report comes out?
No, Prof.
Okay,
No
so
report
they are going
on
to
the
do this.
evaluation part.
Okay, right. So we may want to look out for this as well. Maybe we'll do a follow-up on this, or we just share it in on our Facebook, all that lah. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, for statistical analysis, all analyses were based on the intention to treat principle with the exclusion of participants subsequently found to be ineligible. A sensitivity analysis for the primary outcome include these participants. For primary outcome, the primary analysis consists of a survival analysis of time to change in glycemic status at or prior to the final patient visit, which occurred at varying times after 12 months for each patient. Kaplan-Meier plot. Keeping the original assumptions constant, a survival analysis using a log rank test with 14 months of median effective follow-up had approximately 80% power. Sensitivity analysis using Poisson models. The effectiveness of the study intervention on the primary outcome was estimated using Cox proportional hazard model for survival data with randomized group and use of insulin during index pregnancy as fixed effects and study center as a random effect. For secondary outcome, a similar approach was taken for the secondary outcome of type 2 diabetes. Time to development of type 2 diabetes was identified using Cox model. Other models consist of longitudinal linear mixed model. For other secondary outcomes for continuous variables, repeated measure linear mixed models were used to assess differences between groups over time. Model fixed effects included the randomized group, visit and group by visit interaction, use of insulin during index pregnancy and baseline value of the outcome. Random intercepts by participant and study center were added to the model. For pre-specified sensitivity analysis included using HbA1c or fasting plasma glucose when OGTT results were not available, and additionally, Poisson regression was used in place of Cox model.
Maybe we want to stop for a while. We may want to discuss a bit on the statistical strategy. As you can see, the initial sample size estimation was actually based on the proportions between the two groups. And you know why they have to change to kind of reanalyze whether their sample size was sufficient, because the recruitment was taking too long. And then they realized that there are problems of very different stages of recruitment, and patients may be coming in and they reach their, because they are too long of the recruitment, so patients were of different duration, too long enough that they cannot ignore of the occurrence of the outcome. So they actually changed to look at the time to occurrence of outcomes as a primary analysis, and for the report of the outcomes. Yeah, so you see, this is kind of, if you are very strict on the trial protocol, then you say this is a violations or diversion from your protocol. But so long that you provide the justifications for diversions, and then that's okay, and it's actually a show of scientific honesty, how you actually change from what you propose to do. Yeah, but however, I'm just want to also raise the attention of possible issues of why these 14 months instead of the original plan of 24 months, right, follow up. But they were showing here 14 months with the power 80%. Yeah, so keep in mind of that as well. So what happened if, anything beyond that? Is it higher power or lower power? Don't really know. If if you have any comments, or you can feel free to comment on this. Otherwise, the rest of the multi-variable analysis, to me, it looks like quite robust. They were trying to adjust for all the potential possible imbalances at baseline, as well as important factors. Do you have another slide? Just keep in mind of this issue in statistical analysis, which is not usual to many of us, is the interaction term. You see, on the other secondary outcome, the second point, model fixed effects included the randomized group, visit, and group by visit interaction. I think probably in a further slide or other part of the paper, they include these variables, interaction variable, between group and other variable, group and age, group and categories of this GDM to randomization period, all this, when you have an interaction term in the model, just be careful with the interpretations. The concept behind this is that you believe individual variable have their independent effect on the outcome, but you also believe there are interaction between the variables. Yeah, so usually this is done, according to what I know, this has to be done carefully and also pre-specified in the protocol. So we may want to check the published or registered protocol, whether they a priori, meaning they think about this beforehand. They cannot do this ad hoc with the data set. Otherwise, there are so many interaction terms that you can put in and create. Yeah, so there must be a reason why the interaction term is put in there, group plus visit lah. I'm not also very clear about what is this visit variable, so once you have this interaction term in the model, you believe that the two variable here, visit and group, they have a different effect, additional effect or multiply effect beside visit on its own and the group on its own. The group here is either intervention group or control group lah. Yeah. Usually you can read many papers from from our friends and colleagues and probably less sophisticated investigator, right? We just have one variable each on its own, but you can see this paper is actually included an interaction between two groups, two variables. So they believe that there is additional effect from these two variables when they put together. Yeah, so keep that in mind. If the interpretation will be slightly different.
Okay, can I continue, Prof? Okay. No imputation for missing data was done. Statistical significance is based on a two-sided type 1 error rate of 5%. A whole bound-Ferroni adjustment was used to control the family-wise error rate across secondary outcomes. All analyses were conducted using HSAAS Enterprise Guide Statistical Software version 7.15. Data were analyzed from April to July 2021. This is the ethical approval formation. Okay, this is the visual abstract of the journal. As we can see here, for the primary outcome, change in glycemic category by final visit, development of type 2 diabetes or progression from normal glucose tolerance to impaired fasting glucose or impaired glucose tolerance per American Diabetes Association criteria. And for the findings, there was no significant difference in the proportion of study participants with change in glycemic category by final visit between usual care and lifestyle interventions group. Proportion with change in glycemic category for lifestyle intervention about 25.5% and for usual care 27.1%. Okay, now we move on to the results part. Okay, figure 2 shows the participant flowchart. Okay, a total of 1,612 participants are randomized, but 11 participants were ineligible and excluded from further analysis. About 800 randomized to intervention group and 801 randomized to usual care. At the end of study visit, only 598 participants with OGTT and 32 without OGTT and with HbA1c or fasting plasma glucose were from intervention group, and 635 participants had OGTT and 23 without OGTT and with HbA1c or fasting plasma glucose from the usual care group. End of study visits were conducted at least 12 months post-randomization between July 2020 and January 2021. Okay, for the intervention fidelity, a total of 1,601 women were randomized to the intervention group, which is 800 in intervention and 801 in usual care. About 1,001 or 62.5% women with normal glycemia and 37.5% women with prediabetes. Among participants randomized to the intervention, about 89.6% women received at least some content and 80.5% received all program content delivered as originally planned or through an alternate mode. Intervention fidelity was affected by slow initial recruitment and subsequently by COVID-19 lockdowns. Consequently, among 644 women, about 73.9% women received some or all content through individual engagement. 48.9% women received some or all content remotely. Prior to COVID-19 lockdowns, 139 intervention group participants who had completed a group session were offered intensification sessions owing to non-achievement of weight goals, and 129 of these individuals received at least one such session. After lockdown, because of difficulty in reliably assessing body weight, intensification sessions were offered to all intervention group participants, and 311 individuals received at least one such session.
Okay, Faisal, what do you think of the? Maybe you can also include this slide. What do you think of the reach of the intervention? How much do you think intervention has gone through to the participants in the intervention group? Do you think it's good?
Because for the intervention group, not all women receive all the content. For example, only 80.5% receive all program content. And
Isn't that sounds quite good though? Or is it not good enough?
yeah, for me not good enough because it may affect the intervention, the delivery of intervention, the effectiveness of intervention as they do not involve in all the program content. So, many of the women also receive the content through via remotely, not through individual engagement. For me, it's not good enough for the
Okay,
intervention. Yeah.
yeah, but at least they kind of did receive something lah. Compare, always keep in mind the control group, right? They just life as usual, isn't it?
But we don't know how effective
Okay,
the
right. Let's see your next slide.
okay. This figure shows intervention fidelity. Okay, from a total of 800 participants randomized to intervention, as we can see, only 89.6% of them receive some component of the intervention and the rest receive no component of the intervention. And from the 644 participants receive content of all for group session, 29.3% not eligible for intensification of weight goal, at 21.6% eligible for intensification due to non-attainment of weight goal, and about 49% unable to assess attainment of weight goal due to COVID-19 related lockdowns. Majority of participants had complete 2 intensification sessions.
Okay, I think that's probably an issue here of almost like half unable to access attainment of weight goal, isn't it? Yeah. So it's half of the group. So they were able only to provide like kind of a personalized or personal one-to-one coaching, right? For about 20% saja lah. Yeah, the one that who does not attain the weight goal, I think it's just 2%, right? So if you 50 kilo, so if they have uh you know 50 kilo, 10% is 5, right? So 2% is just 1 kilo, They put on weight over the 6 month and 1 kilo extra from baseline. So they were given the intensification of coaching and one-to-one and then the follow-up, all that, phone call, semua tu. Just for 20% lah. Unfortunately, almost 50% cannot be accessed. Yeah. But then what actually happened, they reported below that completed those who were not accessed, they also put under intensification sessions 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So they were actually given some interventions as well, isn't it?
Yeah. But majority of them are completed 2 intensification sessions.
So the interventions was actually quite intensive. I mean, they don't assess, they can't assess, they also give the intensification sessions, but just 1 or 2 lah. Yeah. The complete one were 2, is it?
Yes.
Two one-to-one sessions, right?
Yeah.
But you can see still majority got it,
Yeah.
yeah.
For unable to assess attainment of weight goal, about 97.2%, and for eligible for intensification due to non-attainment of weight goal, about 89.9%.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, this table show baseline characteristic. Okay, as we can see here, the mean age of participant in intervention group was 30.7, and for usual care, 31 years old. Many participants were recruited from India as compared to Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. Many participants were having a family history of diabetes. Many participants were overweight or obese, and more than half of the participants have a normal glycemia as compared to IFG, IGT, and both IFG and IGT. Do you have any comment on this table, Prof?
How about the participants? You have anything to say? This is a baseline characteristic now of the two groups, right? They are. Do you think they are comparable? So in every clinical trials, the one thing important that you want to look for will be the baseline characteristic, whether the two groups are, comparable in all the important supposedly prognostic factors that are captured. So to me, very, very effective randomization. I would say very, very comparable. So similar, isn't it?
Yeah, so similar.
Remember that the one that we appraised the paper earlier by our CRO Savannah on the ITAC study. Immediately when you look at the baseline table, there are already some factors they are not kind of balanced. But compared to this, you can see they are quite very similar. Yeah, if you really want to pick, is the category of BMI lah. If you really want to pick lah. But you see, all the baseline clinical trials baseline table, we don't test the statistical significant differences and reporting the p-value. I hope you remember what I said in that earlier MJH, is that this is by random, so it's meaningless. You report the p-value again. If you understand what is p-value, it's nothing but the probability value. So if it's done by random, so you don't need to show the p-value again. It's by random. Yeah, but epidemiologists would advise look at it visually. If you should suspect or worried any potential significant differences, then of course you can proceed to the test, or you can just put them in your final inferential statistics when you estimate the outcomes, the treatment outcomes. But I think in this study they did that. They put in some baseline. They put in the baseline value as well. And also they do some subgroup analysis, isn't it? For some important variable according to the investigators. I think the age, BMI, and what insulins are used during pregnancy, all that. And the other thing probably is the glycemic status lah. The normal glycemia looks like a bit slightly more in the intervention group.
Yeah, as compared to usual care.
Yeah, but even that at the end you don't see any difference between the two groups. Yeah, so it means there's something really wrong lah. Yeah, if it's not the intervention, then it must be the delivery, or must be the deliverer lah. Yeah. Okay. Is there any comment from the participants? Feel free to put in the chat box lah. Yeah. And then also feel free to unmute yourself and speak out also. Okay, right. Let's go on.
Okay. Alright, for the primary outcome, median follow-up 14 months for the intervention group and 14.3 months for the usual care group. A total of 1,308 participants had an of a study follow-up or GTT, or at least one follow-up or GTT, which increased to 1,438 individual when HbA1c or fasting plasma glucose were also considered. Worsening of glycemic status occurred in 421 participants. Okay, as we can see here, at the median of 14.1 months of follow-up for glycemic deterioration, intervention group contributed to 25.5% and in usual care contributed 27.1%. In sensitivity analysis using Poisson models, including all randomized participants and using alternate measures of glycemia among individuals without an OGTT, there was still no statistically significant difference in risk between the groups. Okay, this is the Kaplan-Meier plot for primary outcome. The proportions shows in the plot are a function of the number of patients experiencing an event by a certain time in the subset of patients who were still at risk at that time, after excluding patients who had already experienced an event or been censored. The curve in the usual care group, the goal one, decreases to 0% by 36 months, indicating that by 36 months, all patients had been censored or experienced an event. For example, no patient was still at risk. Okay, from this analysis, there was no statistically significant difference in risk between intervention and control. Okay, this is the participant disposition by visit. As we can see here, at the month 36, number at risk from intervention was 2 and number at risk from usual care was 0. And for the intervention, one events from worsening glucose, glycemia, and one for censored at the end of study visit. Okay, this is a sensitivity analysis for primary outcome. In sensitivity analysis using Poisson model, including all randomized participants and using alternate measures of glycemia among individuals without an OGTT, there was still no statistically significant difference in risk. Okay, for secondary outcomes, there were no statistically significant differences between randomized groups in any secondary outcomes. Type 2 diabetes developed in 144 individuals, 74 participants in the intervention group, and 80 individuals in the usual care group. Type 2 diabetes developed among 20.3% individual with pre-diabetes at baseline and 3.2% individual with baseline normoglycemia. Body weight increased in both groups by 0.4 kg despite a decrease in calorie intake. There were small decreases overall in moderate physical activity levels and sedentary behavior, with no statistically significant between group differences. Sleep duration, fasting plasma glucose, and blood pressure increased in both groups without any statistically significant between group differences. Okay, table 2 shows the effects of intervention on secondary outcome. Cox model was used to analyze time to development of type 2 diabetes, and other models consist of longitudinal linear mixed models, including available data collected during follow-up. As we can see here, there is no statistical significance. Okay, Kaplan-Meier plot for development of type 2 diabetes. Okay, type 2 diabetes developed in 154 individuals in the intervention group and 80 individuals in the usual care group. Okay, effects of intervention on additional outcomes is shown in table 4. Okay, as we can see here, there were no statistically significant there is no statistically significant between group differences for other pre-specified outcomes. Ultimately, given that p-values for all outcomes were non-significant, no adjustment for multiple comparison was made. And as we can see here, there were small decreases in moderate physical activity, sedentary activity, total carbohydrate intake, protein intake and fat intake, as well as sodium intake in intervention and usual care.
Professor, would you like to share a bit on how this dietary recall being analyzed, or is there any info on this paper?
From this paper, there's no info on the 24 diet recall analysis, Prof.
Based on your professional experience, how would all this dietary recall being assessed or analyzed?
The dietary recall will be analyzed using Nutritionist Pro, and from the analysis, we will identify the macronutrient and micronutrient intakes of
Your
the subjects.
your response just now earlier one was actually can't hear.
Oh,
I think
sorry.
the mic wasn't pick up actually soon. Every time when you start to talk, the voice actually don't come out until I think about 3-4 seconds, you know.
Okay, I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
Okay, based on my experience, from the 24-hour diet recall will be analyzed using Nutritionist Pro software, and from the analysis, we will identify the macronutrient and micronutrients from the
What,
participants.
so I mean, who actually got all this data? I mean, all this intake isn't it based on patients? I mean, the participants self-report.
Yes, participants self-report their intakes within 24 hours.
So I suppose whatever the Nutrient Pro that you mentioned, they are validated tool, is it?
Yes, the
Can
Nutritionist Pro
can it be
is not.
like uh untrue? I mean, people can still report something that is not right, that kind of thing.
They may have under-reporting or over-reporting their consumptions of food, but the analysis was true.
Okay. So you based on how true were the report from the source provider lah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I suppose if it's validated, so that tool should be believable lah, to some extent, isn't it?
Is there
Prof, can
anyone
I add
to?
something?
Yeah, go ahead.
So actually, for dietary recall data, there is one more measurement where we will measure the misreporters data, in which that we will categorize the patient according to their dietary record, whether they are under-reporting or over-reporting. So these data were reported against their basal metabolic rate, but I don't think the researchers has done the analysis in this study in terms of the misreporting dietary data.
So is this a better report or not so good report?
I think it is better to have the misreporting data so that we know the proportion of the subjects, whether they are correctly reported their dietary intake or not. Because we can use the misreporting data on their basal metabolic rate, in which that if they have increase in body weight, but then they reported that their dietary intake is low, so that could be related to under-reporting of dietary data.
Which is not given here, is it? Or may not be
No,
done by the researcher?
no.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, right. But however, it shows that they kind of seem to improve in a healthy lifestyle here lah. Yeah, as they reported in this paper, isn't it? But it happened in both groups.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Okay, for primary outcome in pre-specified subgroups, the effects of the lifestyle intervention on the primary outcome of worsening glycemic status were broadly consistent across pre-specified subgroups. There was no statistically significant heterogeneity of intervention effect by subgroup. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Hold on first. I think before we go into discussion, uh, you remember when this study were recruiting the participants. Remember, there's like almost half of them did not turn out for their post-delivery OGTT. Yeah. If probably Faisal, can you go back to show that flowchart, the consort flowchart again? Just want to make a point. There's one threat to internal validity of this study is the health behavior of the control group participants, because you can see both actually were, you would actually be able to say, or you may want to keep in mind that the consort diagram, I think the earlier one. Sorry, I think is that a flow chart, or probably in the result section. I think there's one that you square with a green square, that kind of thing. That one. Okay, you see there's like almost half did not turn out for their post-delivery OGTT, So this would be the group that really don't really care, that kind of thing. You say they are not health conscious, they are not health conscious, they don't care. They default their follow-up, isn't it? But those that the study recruited, we would suspect they were slightly more health conscious compared to that 1566, so say 18223 were those who actually turned out for their visit. So they would, I would say it's logical to perceive or to suspect these are the group that in the study will generally have a higher or better health conscious compared to the other as already did not turn out. So for this, that slightly probably more health conscious woman, and you randomize into two groups, and then they know that they are either in the intervention groups with all that group sessions, telephone call and messages. And if they realize that they were in the control group, there's one concept of actually, we call it, reaction. And they found that if they realize they are health conscious, right, in the beginning, and if they realize that later, they were randomized into the control group, not the intervention group. So they were feeling like, I'm in the control group, so I better do something more, that kind of thing. That's one of the things, reaction. They could be reacting to the group allocations because of, they could be because of insatisfaction, or they can be because of just want to show you that I'm also healthy conscious, that kind of thing. Though they may actually change their behavior because realizing that in the control group, that may happen. Yeah. So and how much that can react to their healthy lifestyle, and at the end to the effect of the outcomes, I really don't know. Yeah. Okay. So if you see the result just now, it's really like, can you go back to that table again that's showing glycemic deterioration? Yeah. You see, that one. Earlier one. Yeah, this one. You see, either if you were the investigator, really, so sad, isn't it? After you've done so much at the end, and the two groups just happen to be, macam nothing happened, They just behave so similarly. Even they are behaving so similarly, is 25% is huge, It's just between like 1.5 years, 14 months here. The longest probably like 20 months. The earliest probably like 11 months, right? So you see, like just about 1 to 1.5 year, so many of them deteriorate, in terms of glycemic category. So this is very, very frightening to me. Out of 800, 200 actually from normal glycemia become pre-diabetes, or from pre-diabetes become diabetes, or even from normal glycemia straight away become type 2 diabetes, right? So I don't know about Malaysia. If this is happening there, if they don't do anything about this, they are going to be crazy. Remember, there's another 15 something 22 just now. If those were somehow something happened out, they may be because of social responsibility and they cannot turn up for visit. If these were the groups were more health conscious, and they recorded like 25% deterioration in their glycemic category, what happened to that 15 something? It may be 30%. Yeah, they're going to have a crazy kind of this epidemic over there. I hope they come up with something else. If this intervention does not work, why can't something more simpler and impactful? I don't know, like maybe a mobile apps or something. I don't know. They have to do something, like, isn't it? Otherwise, they are going to have very crazy sick populations, isn't it? But very sad to see that the intervention does not have better outcomes on this thing. But keep in mind all the factors that we discussed, yeah. Okay, let's go to the discussion, see what the investigators understood from all these things.
Okay, for discussion, for this study, as compared to usual care, the lifestyle intervention did not influence changes in body weight, fasting plasma glucose, or other outcomes. A mean increase in body weight was observed in both groups, despite decreases in calorie intake. This may have been counterbalanced by decreased physical activity based on the limited data on which this could be assessed. As compared to a 2018 systematic review identified 15 RCT of lifestyle interventions post-GDM, of which 8 studies were included in meta-analysis of the effects on diabetes incidence. The finding did not show a clear reduction in diabetes incidence with lifestyle intervention, but suggested that interventions delivered within 12 months of childbirth may be more effective. The systematic reviews also reported that lifestyle interventions post-GDM were associated with decreases in body weight by approximately 1 kilogram. Okay, important finding of this study, as we can see here, the high incidence of early postpartum dysglycemia with 8.8% and 34.1% presenting for a pre-randomization OGTT having type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes respectively at a median of 6.9 months postpartum. Of individuals with pre-diabetes at baseline, 20.3% developed type 2 diabetes during follow-up, compared with 3.2% among those with baseline normoglycemia, identifying a particularly high-risk group. Okay, the study has major strengths. The major strengths of these studies are a large sample size, particularly relative to the existing evidence base and inclusion of participants from diverse settings. The trial design had broad inclusion and limited exclusion criteria with good statistical power to identify moderate intervention effects on clinically relevant outcomes. The largest trial to date that has reported the effects of lifestyle interventions among women with recent GDM. The living intervention was based on previous approaches that were associated with decreases in body weight, but was modified through a careful process of formative research in participating countries to be scalable in the context of available resources and patient preferences. This may have resulted in an intervention that was simply inadequate, particularly in terms of the personnel involved, given that staff expertise was identified as an implementation characteristic associated with the greatest postpartum weight decrease in a 2019 systematic review. COVID-19 restrictions also impacted the mode of intervention delivery in the study. A substantial proportion of face-to-face group sessions modified to remotely delivered individual sessions. Loss of in-person group interaction dynamics may have impacted effectiveness. Lockdown restrictions may have decreased opportunities to increase physical activity and adapt a healthy diet. And a mixed methods process evaluation may provide more insights into the potential reasons for the lack of intervention effectiveness.
What do you think, Faisal, or of the points? Do you agree?
From my understanding and from my point of view, I agree.
Can't hear you, no?
From my understanding and from my point of view, I agree with these reasons, with these factors, because all these factors could influence the intervention delivery, the effectiveness of the intervention. Prof.
Yeah, but do you agree that they say it's simply inadequate, the interventions? What else can we do? Apa lagi nak cakap, diet and exercise what? You have group sessions and we have personal one-to-one session. Apa lagi you want to say? I mean, how many hours was involved? Like 2-3 hours, right, in the group sessions, or up to 4 hours?
It depends on the self-awareness as well, Prof.
Even if simply inadequate according to the investigator, but then compared to the control group who actually just life as usual, there's already something been given to this woman in the intervention group, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have the group sessions, more up to 80%, 90% of them they got it, even at least one sessions or all that. So really, I think we want to look to their process evaluations. Of course, there are some concept and theory about all these psychoeducations, health, human behaviors. Whether give something is good than nothing. If you have any idea or comments, feel free to say on this point as well. Is it really good to have something compared to nothing, or must it be given in the whole package? Otherwise, small knowledge, as according to one philosopher, small knowledge is something dangerous. But is it true? Is it applicable here? Compared to the control group, who is, as you whatever they are, uh, but the intervention group, they receive something. Typically, they hear whoever the deliverer about diet, about exercise, and even personal call, all that messages. I'm sure if they measure knowledge, they do measure self-efficacy. I don't understand why all this were not better when compared to the control group.
Prof,
Sorry,
Prof.
Prof. Yeah, sure.
Prof,
Hi,
may I?
Sawana here. Oh, Azifa, yeah.
Okay, Kak Sawana, go on.
Okay, all right. I might want to question about the participants' compliance toward the interventions. Because from here we can see that they only follow up the participant via telephone, via phones. But do they have any other methods, to make sure that the participant follow the intervention, like maybe send the videos, the pictures, or maybe the recorded activities through the, watch, something like that? So I would like to question that because, it's like similar as compared to the control groups, like the intervention group did nothing, maybe they lie about their reports, their phones. I don't know, but I think that might be the reasons. What say you?
Point taken. Who is the other one? Go ahead. Is Azifa?
Actually, I have a similar point with Kak Sawana because I want to know how they measure the practice of the participant actually.
Okay. Let's say take it as they don't measure, but they did deliver, isn't it? Mean the participant in the intervention group, they were exposed. They were exposed to the health education. They were exposed to someone talk to them. Why can't you actually control it? I mean, I don't know how they do it lah, but at least someone will actually come and make them accountable to their goals. They set some goals, right? And should they did not achieve, so someone will call them up, and one to one, hello Azifa, why you did not achieve your goal, or what is your problem? So someone actually call up you, and okay, probably they should measure whether the patient react to that, whether they change their behavior. But having the interventions and then we leave it to them, it does not seem to work lah. Yeah, if you really want to kind of check on them, then they'll be very very personal, and it could be considered as intrusion to privacy already. Whatever I do also you want to see. You want to put a CCTV and see how I live my life. Can't. That become probably a bit intrusive lah. May not be feasible in a scientific research, but taken as what is reported, and here, I mean, remember they actually have conduct some formative research, meaning it properly assess whether the intervention could be locally feasible and appropriate. Remember, they were doing that, and they have this worry of the original intervention has been too simplified, as what they discuss here. But to me, now we want to think, if we want to do something similar in our setting, we also want to do something that is implementable later on, isn't it? So something that is implementable, but yet something is good enough, impactful enough, strong enough. So the balance is very fine, I suppose, and you need someone who really know how to draft, design such a program. As what we have now in this paper, so the intervention group have all this, and they don't see a result. So there are a few reasons here lah. Though what they have mentioned about their strength, so they put out some worry as well, that I think they really do not know. Even you say COVID-19 restrictions, they could not actually do face-to-face the kind of dynamic we know in our university. The students also like that can. But even that remotely also there are something, isn't it? So my questions, my bottom line question is really something is not, is something compared to nothing is not good enough? Can must it be the whole thing, the package, that kind of thing? Or must it be some level of intensity of this health education? Then only the effect will comes out. Can't the patients, who are like high risk get something out of us, even remotely, to have a health effect on this outcome? Meaning to say, must I be giving a complete health education? Otherwise, might as well I don't say anything or don't do anything. Is that what it means? I mean, in terms of this study outcome, is that the deterioration in glycemic category lah? Yeah, who is that? Is it Ashra Didi? Are you from one of the country in the study? Or are you Malaysian? Sorry. Yeah. Asha, is it? Do you want to say something? Or perhaps not. Okay. Yeah. Maybe we shall go on. I think we are almost run out of time. See what the author say.
Okay, the study has several limitations. Okay, first, participant unblinded design. Laboratory request form did not include information on participant allocation, and an independent observer verified all outcome data in the case record form against original laboratory results. Bias self-reporting on diet and physical activity. Intervention facilitators were not involved in trial follow-up, and study officers were not involved in intervention delivery. While a central laboratory was not used, randomization was stratified by center. The systematic differences among laboratories may not have introduced bias. The trial was limited to hospital in urban setting, and the findings may not be broadly generalizable even within South Asia, especially to non-urban areas in these countries. Some data derived from the questionnaire on physical activity were found to be unreliable, raising questions about validity of the instrument in this population and this setting, because they were using a modified global physical activity questionnaire. COVID-19 restriction impacted outcome ascertainment among some participants, although not differentially between groups, and not to the extent that study power was compromised. Okay. Anything to comment, Prof, for the limitation of the study before we proceed with the CASP RCT test?
Yes. Proceed to the CASP. Let's see how you come up with that.
The CASP randomized control trial checklist. We will appraise the research paper using this tool. Okay, section A. Is the basic study design valid for a randomized control trial? Okay, for the first questions, did the study address a clearly focused research question? We should consider, is the research question focused in terms of population study, intervention given, comparator chosen, outcome measures? So the answer is, for me, is yes. What are the things?
I agree also.
Okay. Second, was the assignment of participants to intervention randomized? We should consider how was randomization carried out? Was the method appropriate? Was randomization sufficient to eliminate systematic bias? Was the allocation sequence concealed from investigators and participants? What is the answer for this question number 2? For me, the answer is no. What do you think?
Why not? thought yes, because they have this centralized computer randomization. Or do you think it's not concealed?
Even though the study investigator and participant were unblinded, but all the central study staff were blinded until final time. So yes, maybe yes. Maybe the answer is yes. Okay. Question number 3. Were all participants who entered the study accounted for at its conclusion? Okay, for me, yes. Okay. Shall we proceed, Prof?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay. For section B, was the study methodologically sound? For 4.1, were the participants blind to intervention they were given? Okay, the answer is no. Were the investigators blind to the intervention they were giving to participants? Okay, the answer is no. Were the people assessing or analyzing outcomes blinded? The answer is yes. Okay, for question number 5, were the study groups similar at the starts of the RCT? Okay, the answer is yes. Okay, for question number 6, apart from the experimental intervention, did each study group receive the same level of care? That is, were they treated equally? Okay, what is the answer for question number 6? I'm not sure about this, Prof.
No, they were not treated equally. If we think, in health behavior interventions, they also want to consider to control for professional attention. There are some belief all these educations, group-based and personal, all that, do also introduce influences beside the content of the intervention itself. Though some believe that you want to have that similar kind of exposure in the control group. I mean, if you believe that kind of a psychological effect, then the control group should be exposed to the same categories of deliverer, nurses or sociology counselor, that kind of thing, but not about diet, not about exercises. They just be present there, chit chat for the same period of hours. To be able to say the control group also receives the same level of care, that kind of thing. Yeah. But some other school thought that this is ridiculous. The intervention is a whole package, also including the professional exposure. So I suppose in this study, the investigators, took that line of belief that the whole interventions, including professional exposure, so they don't adjust for that in the control group, which is fine. But so long you keep that in mind, that intervention also including the exposure, mean the professional contact with the people, with all that. Yeah, but unfortunately, this study does not show any difference, isn't it? Apa you buat pun macam no different at the end.
Alright, for section C, what are the results? Okay, 7, were the effects of intervention reported comprehensively? Okay, for me, yes. Was the precision of the estimate of the intervention or treatment effect reported? Were confidence intervals reported? Yes, the answer is yes. Do the benefits of the experimental intervention outweigh the harms and costs? Okay, for me, the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For question number 10, can the results be applied to your local population in your context? These questions, I don't know what's the answer. But for me, it's no.
Then it all up to you all to think, your setting. If you're talking about Malaysian setting, I think why not? But we don't actually get to the details. What do they discuss about diets in the group sessions, and what kind of goals they were trying to set with the participants, and how they deliver it? We don't know. Probably the culture and our culture may be different. Yeah, but this is talking from our perspective, but for the study, I think what they did is almost perfect. They try to deliver locally feasible and appropriate intervention according to them lah. Yeah, so whether we applicable to us, I think it will be your individual judgment lah. But to me, I would say almost like what else can we do? You have group session, you get personal one-to-one. Apa lagi yang boleh nak buat? If this one does not work, so something must be wrong in the delivery lah. Delivery meaning also what the patients can take it in. You bagi saya, and whether either I said lah, whether I take it or I hate it. Yeah. Then why I hate it? Why not I take it? That kind of thing lah. If I take it, then to what extent I can take it in? To what extent I can change my lifestyle lah? Why not? Why not I change it? I was told to be high risk. Why not I change the way I live? Yeah. Yeah. So probably that will be another like what they will plan to do lah. Process evaluation. Maybe they thought they have done a formative research. They have come up with a feasible and appropriate intervention. We do not know who they are, when they said they conducted formative research to make sure the intervention is appropriate and feasible. We don't know who they are, who decide on this thing. So if you ask some of us who are here, who did your study in UK or Western countries, so they were talking about very particular about public and patients involvement. So whether they did that with the intervention, if they have done that, then something else will be they have to check on something else. Why no different? After they've done so much, whether it's costly or not, I think it's quite costly though. With all these times and effort to be given. Yeah? But of course, you have to assess that properly, lah, whether it's cost effective or not. But definitely, there's no outcome that's not cost effective. Lah.
For the last question, would the experimental interventions provide greater value to the people in your care than any of the existing interventions?
No value lah. If there's no result, no value. Cannot do. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, for the conclusion, this study found that a pragmatic lifestyle intervention did not prevent glycemic deterioration among women with recent GDM at urban centers in South Asia. Most women who were assessed developed a deterioration of glycemia during follow-up before or after randomization, and those with pre-diabetes represented a particularly high-risk group for the development of diabetes. These findings suggest that additional strategies, including preventive drug therapies, should be considered for further research in this group. And the findings of the living study could be influenced by COVID-19, which impacted the intention delivery. Alright, okay. That's all from me.
Okay, right. Probably we are going to end very soon. Probably you can spend 1 or 2 minutes to discuss the result or conclusions. If you would like to say anything about the conclusions. No, they put out a very, very daring conclusions that I can feel, the investigators say, oh, we do so much, still no effect, no difference. Maybe we should include drugs, Bagi saja metformin macam tu. Bagi dah, give drug, pharmaco already. No, they probably can feel the investigators say, oh, we have done so much and still it does not work. So in our women, I mean in India, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, they were saying, forget about non-pharmaco, or cannot just rely on non-pharmaco. Must also have pharmaco. What do you think? Almost like given up with it, disappointed, given up with the non-pharmacological intervention. Saying, this woman, cannot trust them, must bagi them ubat, But there are actually not many drugs available also to reduce so-called the risk of diabetes or for obesity drug. And they are not actually also very safe and all that, isn't it? And yeah, anyone? Anything you want to add on what the authors have mentioned in the paper? Anyone? Maybe something else that you want to think of, some other factors. If you want to reduce the risk of diabetes, is it just about diet and exercise? No, although I believe these are the two important and strong factors, isn't it? If you can modify these two, of course it must be effective to the end of reducing your weight lah. If you do this, do exercise, do a diet, all that, but then your weight stay the same, then you may not see the health benefits of it. And that's why I think they don't see the weight difference between the two groups, isn't it, at the end? That's why you don't see the effect of the glycemic deteriorations being different between the two groups. But what else can we do besides diet and exercise? Besides diet and exercise and weight, what else can we do? Which was not addressed in this study? Try to imagine you were in Bangladesh, India, and Sri Lanka, in the areas of. Most of the people there, I believe, in a low socioeconomic status. Yeah, they're probably fighting for what survival, especially during the pandemics. And I think dietitian and nutritionists, you are aware that it's actually more expensive to practice a healthier diet, isn't it? It's more expensive. And if they all most of the participants, you tell them to eat healthily, cakap lah senang, you bagilah duit kat saya, kan? You give me the food lah, give me the what, high, good protein, good fat, what, good vegetable, all these things lah. You don't just tell me to eat healthily. Why don't you supply me? Yeah. So probably that may not be so effective if they can't afford. So I suspect maybe it's not good enough to tell people what to do. You want to also to see whether they're affordable to do it. They say exercise. Of course, then it's very valid. They say the lockdown, they can't come out, can't go to work, just stay at home, kan? So what can they do? They probably don't have double story like most of us have. They can climb and run up and down the stair. Probably their house is very small. Remember, I always remember when I talk about this country. Of course, there are big houses there, but most of the people have like studio house, isn't it? Everyone like even sleep in the living room, no separate room for different family members, all that. Then do we expect them to exercise in the house? Do you think they can jumping rope all that in the house? I don't know, no, yeah. So maybe all this good on paper educations is not good when the people try to do it out. And other factors may not be actually has been addressed sufficiently, will be mental health. Isn't it? You know that if you're stressed out, you're distressed, you're depressed, all that can actually cause, all these are glycogenic